Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's episode, we're talking about bounties and if they're good and bad for the hobby. We're going to talk about the Ronald Acuna Jr. Bowman Chrome Superfractor sale versus the Bryce Harper Bowman Chrome Superfractor sale, which we would rather have, and more. Let's introduce who's here on today's episode. My name is Scott. I have a YouTube channel called Scotty B Cards. If you want to check that out later. We have Phil with a YouTube channel called Filmington, and we have Chris and Jeff who have their own channel called Blabbin' About Slabbin'. So we're missing you, producer Lance, and we're missing you, Ty, but we will grab you in the next episode. All right, let's jump into this. Very first topic, bounties. The reason I'm bringing up bounties is we saw bounties become a thing for Bowman Chrome autographs. No, not Bowman Chrome autographs, Bowman Chrome, the base cards, where they were double printed and Topps came out and said, okay, we're going to have a bounty for these cards to come back. If you're the first one, we'll give you X amount. And they were way higher than those cards ever will be worth. Like realistically, we've not seen Superfractor Bowman Chrome base cards go for $50,000. I think that's what the top one was worth roughly. And so it's one of those things where it was them owning up to a mistake, it felt like, and that was great. And that was directly from Fanatics to apologize. That caused controversy, but I'm not too upset about that. We talked about that in length. But now we're having third-party breaking companies or distributors coming in with their own bounties. Now we're seeing, is it DA Card World? Blowout Cards know which one it is. Is it DA Card World?
DA Card World, yeah.
We're seeing DA Card World come in with a bounty for the Anthony Volpe actual rookie debut patch autograph at a Topps Chrome update. They are offering $150,000 for that. The Jordan Walker's going for $100,000. And I think you'd be hard pressed to sell those for that price on the open market. And so they're artificially elevating the ceiling of these products. And do you view this as a negative thing for this set and for the hobby moving forward? We saw this same bounty system with the One Ring that also might have been DA Card World. And I want to know, do you think it's just them pushing product? Do you think that they actually believe in those cards long term? What's everybody's thoughts? I want to hear first from Jeff.
Well, I'd be interested to know if there is some sort of relationship between Fanatics and the people giving these bounties, maybe a financial relationship or some sort of distribution relationship, because it doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense for a company like DA. I don't know if having the bounty specifically has them sell more product because they're providing the bounty for cards purchased from anywhere. So it doesn't mean you have to buy through them specifically. So maybe they're just thinking it raises market awareness. But I think you touched on the biggest issue is that it's not allowing the market to decide what the prices should be of the cards. So it doesn't give the entire collecting community a very good representation of what these cards would be worth, because you're artificially pricing the better cards or the best cards in this particular case. Then you try to figure out where the other ones fall, and it's a little bit of a screwy situation. So I would rather not see them. I mean, I like how it creates some excitement in the hobby, but I don't think it's worth what it does to make the market artificial.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I mean, I think we know there's a lot of like artificially inflated value of brand new product when it gets ripped. So if some company wants to independently put some crazy price tag on it, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, there's no universe where an Anthony Volpe card should be worth $150,000. But if my dad and I pull one when we're like drunkenly ripping packs at his bar at his assisted living facility, you bet your ass we are going to cash that bounty in within 20 minutes of pulling it. So, I mean, if it makes people rip more product, I mean, that's great because it puts singles out there for, those of us to buy who like to cherry pick those. I don't know. It feels there's a little something fake. Something feels a little bit off about it. Like, I don't know where the funding is coming from. Like, because if they ever try to resell this card, they're going to take a bath on it unless Volpe either hits 60 home runs in a season or shoots the president. Like, there's just no way that card could possibly sustain that. But otherwise, like, I don't know. It doesn't really get me either way.
You just got us demonetized. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Oh.
I was just joking with the shoot the president comment. It was just a joke. And Phil, what's your thoughts?
So I think as a business move, it's as part of like a marketing initiative. I think these bounties make a lot of sense to help drive interest in the product, to help more product get broken. by people that would ordinarily break wax, but also people outside of card collectors are now hearing about some of these, and then promotions outside of Bounties too, the Taco Fractor, things like that as well. So I think from that standpoint, it's cool. Where I don't like it is not so much as a wax holder. Once these 2 cards are pulled, and maybe there's other bounties on additional cards, but clearly there's 2 top cards in the set, Anthony Volpe and Jordan Walker. And I agree with all you guys that these cards should not, like in the open market, they would not sell for anything close to their bounty prices. It'd probably be somewhat close to like half of what the bounties are set at. So it'd be like $50K for Jordan Walker, $75K for Volpe, maybe upwards of $100K for Volpe if it is indeed his best card. Based on some of the resale prices so far that we've seen for these nobodies, these are going for more than superfractor Bowman Chrome auto equivalents. A lot of these guys are like 26, 28-year-olds that literally haven't, they're rookies, so they haven't played before, and they didn't do a whole lot. And some of these guys, most of them I haven't heard of. And the fact that they're doing 2K, maybe it's because it's excitement of the product. Singles prices tend to be higher first month of release, a couple weeks after release. This is a new set. I guess the first one being pulled makes it even more memorable because there's even more of a story to it. But like as a long-term hobby guy and as a singles collector and investor, I would rather have a new set that is probably already going to be successful because of what they've done with this. And they've been pumping this since the Tops event earlier this year, the industry summit. Like, this would be a successful product. It's okay if Anthony Volpe's card doesn't break 100,000 because the market ebbs and flows. And it doesn't mean that 5 years from now, just because him and Walker disappointed this year and their cards didn't sell for as much as what Fanatics had hoped, I still think in the long term, it would end up being a very successful set, this MLB debut patch thing. So like, what we're going to struggle with now is not understanding the true market for any of these cards, because now they're based off of the high sales of these 2 cards, and they're not sales, and they might not be going into the hands of collectors either, which is another issue you could say, or at least not right away. And like, what's everything worth? Like, at least with like the Ethan Salas bounty, like he's got other parallels. We kind of can figure out like what the super would be worth, right? He's got the red and some of the other true colors. Like with the Babe Ruth card, there's other variants, but like with this new set, like you're literally taking an inaugural set and those top 2 cards that would be defining the market. We're not going to know what the market is. Like, again, like ebbs and flows, seasonality, macro factors, economy factors. Like, it's okay for things to sell for less and for them to be selling for more.
Is this setting a precedent, just building on what Phil said, not knowing? So we're not going to know the true market value of this part of the product. So then what happens next year? Are they going to just do that, repeat the process with the higher end card next year's as well?
That's my issue. This is just a lottery ticket at this point. It's literally not being the true value of the card. And that's kind of my issue with it. I should never be upset with fun marketing things like this because it helps someone who pulls it. Like you said, Chris, they're excited they pulled it. So I shouldn't like bash that. But one, these cards right now, in my opinion, are selling for so much for random no names because just the fact it's a new thing. We're all very excited about being the first one on the market. No way in 4 or 5 years when there's 100 of these in each checklist are they going to go for more than a few $100, in my opinion, for like the no names. When I say no names, they've accomplished more than I probably will. So if you're listening to this, who I said you were no name, I apologize. But to me, I don't like it. They've obviously done some sort of analysis, probably with the One Ring promotion, where they said we sold X amount based off of pumping it up X way, and this was worth it for X reason. It's all just for them to make money. And then at the end of the day, they still get the card after pumping it up, and then they can do whatever they want with that card again later. So they could then resell it and then make all that money back if it works out for them. So I think there's some things that I don't love about it myself. I know Ty, he's not here, but we chatted a little bit through chat about this. I know he's in favor for it because he thinks it's fun. And I think it's fun, but maybe I just don't like fun. Maybe I'm just an old man now, but I'm just concerned every single set, all the cool cards have bounties on them, and none of it is really collecting anymore at this point. Fanatics is just catering to pure breaking addiction, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse with these bounties at this point.
Yeah, I would say any Colorado Rocky fan probably just, you don't know what fun is right now. Like it's a numbness to excitement and fun that I totally get. I also think it's weird. Like Volpe to me isn't the biggest name. I would much rather, if I could pick one card, Bounties aside, if I could hold one of these, I'd much rather hold Yuri Perez or Bobby Miller than Anthony Volpe. I know they're pitchers, but I think those two guys are going to be studs for a long time. Sorry, it's unrelated, but throw that
It'll be
out.
interesting to see what those type of players go for, because people really actually be speculating on them. And I think it'll be big enough money where it won't just be excitement as much. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
If you wouldn't mind, let us know what your thoughts are, if you think it's good or bad. Fanatics, in my opinion, is trying to transform this hobby. We are all suckers. We are talking about baseball cards on our Monday evenings for fun. And that's who we are. They have us. We're not going to, no matter what they do, we're going to buy, but they want to entice others. And I think this is a promotion to do so. And so it is what it is. So our next topic, let's discuss Ronald Acuna Jr. and his superfractor sale that just happened through Golden, and the Bryce Harper superfractor sale that just happened as well. So if you don't know, the superfractor Bowman Chrome autograph is generally regarded as the best card of a specific player. Maybe that's going to be challenged by the rookie debut patch we just talked about, but that will take years to find out. But everybody before 2023, the Bowman Chrome superfractor, first Bowman Chrome autograph, that's the card you're going for. And the Ronald Acuna Jr. went up for auction and did not hit the reserve price, but it sold privately for $430,000. And then the Bryce Harper, it did go up for auction and it sold for $420,000. And this is interesting because the Bryce Harper actually sold last year for 3% more. So year over year, it's actually down, but I still kind of feel like this is a pretty good sale for this person just because they made out pretty well on this card with how much the market's dropped year over year. They've done pretty well, but this is the Bryce Harper Bowman Chrome autograph. And here is the Ronald Acuna Jr. Bowman Chrome autograph. They are within $10,000, which quick math, what is that, like 1% or less of actual sale price? So my question for everybody here is, which of these two are you taking and why? I feel like there's an obvious answer, but maybe there's not. And so I don't want to go first after saying that. I want to hear what your thoughts are, Chris. Which of these two are you taking?
I mean, it's a rhetorical question to ask me. I'm not taking either of these because I do not have $400,000 to.
Let's say they're free. They were free. You get one for free.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you're trying to make my wife murder me, like, it doesn't have to be this difficult. I'm obviously gonna take the Acuña card. He is 25 years old, coming off his first MVP in a historic year. I think his ceiling is higher than Bryce Harper's ceiling. I don't know what Harper's WAR was at this age. I don't know if you have his baseball reference.
We can find out.
Sure, it can be discovered, but Acuña just seems to have more hype around him. I know Harper was super hyped back then. I don't know. You can look at my jersey and you know which card I'm taking. I'm not the right person to ask, but I was gonna say Acuña's ceiling is higher than Bryce Harper's.
So, yeah, so we're going to do this really quick. We're going to go age 19. Acuña, was this his age 25 season?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to get results.
Jeff, as a fan of neither team.
Yeah, who are you taking?
It's easy for me as well, and I'm taking Acuña, and exactly the reason Chris said that his ceiling seems higher. Harper is obviously beloved in his Philly hometown right now. But we've talked about it before. He's just been relatively inconsistent throughout his career. He's had some huge highs and huge lows. But so far, from what we've seen with Acuña, when he's been healthy, he's been a dominant player in the league, and his skills just keep improving. So for this particular one, that's an easy one for me.
But it looks like it's Bryce Harper in a landslide, but I want you to pay attention to the fact that Bryce Harper played almost 250 more games by age 25 because of Acuña's injury, and he debuted a year earlier. So realistically, Acuña, to this point, had a better career, in my opinion. He has an MVP. He has a championship. They both had an MVP, more silver sluggers, higher OPS plus. All of the rate stats besides on-base percentage are leaning towards Acuña because Harper walked more. So for me, right, plus stolen bases, there's the speed behind it. Acuña is probably a better defensive player than Harper is as well. Maybe not, but that's just my take on it. But if I had to pick one, I feel like the Bryce Harper, I don't really necessarily think it was overpriced. I don't think that. but maybe the Acuna was underpriced if that's where a Bryce Harper is at, because I think Acuna has a real possibility of winning at least one more MVP. And he's 25 and he's on the Braves, and the Braves right now are going to become a dynasty most likely. So for me, the price point that we saw, I am taking this card personally. Phil, do you agree? Are we unanimous here?
Well, I'll say that if these cards are free, I'm more likely to take a risk on whichever one I think has more upside. If I have to shell out 400, 500,000 on one, maybe, it comes down your level of like risk aversion. I think with Harper, I think the most likely scenario is that this is near the peak, is the all-time peak of this card. 300 to 500,000. Maybe it goes a little bit higher than that, depending on what happens with the rest of his career, market factors on top of that. I think, and I made this clear in the last episode, that I think right now Acuña's market is down. I think there might be a buying opportunity just for that. And another way I might look at this is, and a counterpoint could be for me taking Acuña. Well, when all is said and done, Harper is going to have just as good of a career as Trout, and he's going to overtake him. And it's like, guys, Trout being there or not being there isn't going to help or hurt Harper. What's hurting Harper, and you guys have said it very well, is his inconsistency. And that is why I'm going with Acuña, who I don't know if there's going to be an all-time sale that's going to be higher than this, but I'm going to bet that there's a greater chance that this goes up than the Harper in a significant way. And I'm taking Acuña. And, I like how Harper's rewriting his storyline and narrative, a guy that I believe was voted by his peers most overrated player in the league 2 years in a row. He's adored by fans. He's clearly liked by his teammates now. I like that he's doing that, and he's got a lot of stuff going for him. Previous top prospect, generational prospect. Might go down as a borderline generational player, but I'm still taking Acuña.
Yeah, and just for your point about Trout versus Harper, I really do think that that's just a bias based off of the performance of his team more so than Mike Trout. And we always forget about somebody, how good they were when they are bad for a season or two. We did it with Acuña, literally, like not that long ago. There's a chance Mike Trout stays healthy. I wouldn't say it's a good chance, but there's a chance. And if Trout can go to the Phillies and makes the postseason and does well, his card has much higher upside than I would say Harper's. And for me, I think Bryce Harper's move to first base is going to be a bigger deal than people realize. In my opinion, first basemen historically do not sell well. You can point out a lot of first basemen that just don't sell. And maybe he did enough time in the outfield, it's not a big deal. But I do think there's a chance where he just becomes a offensive only player. He did get the benefit in WAR based off of position adjustment. He's not going to get that position adjustment at first base. His WAR totals will never be that high because of that. Technically, his OPS plus is going to be below Paul Goldschmidt, Joey Votto, and Freddie Freeman at this point as a first baseman. And so it's not as special as a first baseman. So for that reason, I think that hurts. And so I think Acuña, the price that person paid, it's a price I'll never be able to pay unless I sell my house. I think he did great. So any rebuttals to my take on first base? Because I wouldn't say it's a bold take, but it is definitely not a popular take, most likely. Or do you kind of agree with my thought process? Feel free to challenge me if you don't. Seriously, feel free.
I think if he comes out next year, he's healthy, he plays 150 games and hits 40 home runs. The fact he's playing first base instead of right field, it won't matter as much as long as he's physically on the field. The only thing that could potentially hurt him, he just seems like the kind of guy that WAR isn't going to be his be all end all. He's not going to be a Machado type player where we're looking at WAR come Hall of Fame time, but he could lose all-star appearances based on what you were just describing.
And Silver Sluggers.
And then again, in right field, he's not going to get through Acuña or Betts either. So, I mean, his best shot's probably as a DH, which the All-Star team seems to be weird about in the National League. But I don't know. I think as long as he can stay on the field and, hit his 30 to 45 home runs, long-term he's going to be fine. Half his career in right field, half his career at first base. It's kind of who was that? I think Frank Robinson, I think, had a similar path.
Stan Musial, he was just fine with pricing. So, yeah. But we'll see. I guess it's just interesting because it always felt like, look at Frank Thomas from the 90s. If you look at his numbers, they're insane offensively. Oh, yeah. He won multiple MVPs, but he never had the value. And that could be because of team stuff. And the Phillies love Bryce Harper. All Phillies fans love him so much. So, Jeff, any final thoughts?
Oh,
Phil, you can. Jeff will
I was going to say with Tatis, I mean, he took a downgrade in his position, and he ended up putting up a higher defensive WAR, and that's an anomaly. Tatis is an athlete. Now he just needs to learn how to hit again, right? But yeah, Harper going to first base. The hobby tends to be tougher on first baseman. Look at Pete Alonso and what you have to accomplish to be noticed. So, granted, first half of his career, he was still an outfielder, and for parts of that, probably an average one. But the first base move is if this sticks, you're just not nearly as exciting too as a first baseman. I play the position. You know, the hardest thing you have to do is field the short hops from third base. Guy throws it, he's got a natural spin on it, and you master that, and you've got an enormous glove to do that. Now, I'm not trying to downplay that, but there's a reason why guys like Rafael Devers, Vlad's already moved there. Usually I wouldn't say they're not athletes, but the least athletic players often play that position.
Wow. I did not expect Rafael Devers to catch a straight bullet in this conversation. That was unexpected.
Rafael Devers first base move coming 2027.
The poor guy
DH probably. So maybe it's not good to be first base.
He's just at home working out, getting ready for the season, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere,
Rafael Devers was our biggest supporter, Phil. Until you said that. All right, Jeff, what's your take on it?
No, I think we covered this all well. The one point I just wanted to mention, you talked about Acuña's prices, and Phil has talked about it as well, and how it might be a buying opportunity. Chris and I have talked a lot about on our show that we feel like the market and the collectors in general are wanting to see multiple years out of Acuña in order to see a real price increase, multiple healthy, great years. And so, that could happen as soon as next year if he can put another healthy, great season together. So in terms of looking at them being equal prices now, I just think you just can't go wrong with Acuña in that situation.
Yeah. And I do want to say, in Bryce Harper's defense, really quick before we switch the topic, he has been very consistent with Philadelphia. Like, since he's gone over there the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, his lowest OPS plus was 126 his first year. And then he was 158, 179, 146, 146. So he's finding that consistency now as he ages. But he's also going to be 31, moving to first base. I just hope that it works out for him.
And he didn't play full seasons for at least 2 of those, right? So
3 of them, actually, because he played 58 games in 2020, 141 in 2021, won an MVP, 99 in 2022, 126 this year. So he's not played more than 130 games only twice out of the 5 years. So anyways, all right. Well, next topic. Speaking of superfractors, we are on this train. Phil, I think you probably are the most in the know on Juan Soto and his superfractor history. Do you mind teeing up this topic?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So the Juan Soto Bowman Chrome Superfractor from 2016 was originally graded in a Beckett holder. I'm not sure about the year on this, but it was a BGS 9 with a 9 autograph. And you can tell it was a little bit off-centered top to bottom, and also that the autograph, like the J in his signature, actually came off the card. It was a little bit streaky too. And that card was then cracked and then sent to PSA because there's only one of them, so it's easy to identify this card again. It was graded a PSA 10. If you look at the card closely, you'll see that the end of the J in his autograph that was coming off the card, and it was a reason for the 9 autograph through Beckett, that was wiped. And so they took off a half inch of that J in his name, and then they also trimmed the card to make the centering better. And that's what ultimately gave it the PSA 10. So top bottom centering, you can tell the card's a little bit short. So when it was reported that this card was trimmed, and also the autograph being wiped being the first noticeable thing, right? That might have been blowout. I'm not sure who reported this, but there's a sports card radio video on this. Actually, it was deactivated by PSA. And PSA then, I believe, took ownership of the card, and maybe it was some insurance claim paid out. I'm not sure exactly how that worked. But recently, over the last month, people have noticed that this card's cert number was activated again. And the card is being listed as authentic/altered. Folks on Blowout are wondering, what's happening? Is this card going to go back into circulation? Are they going to sell it? Are they going to auction this? Nobody really knows what's going to happen. This card obviously has quite a story to it. It is not in its original state. So we talked about on a recent episode the whole issue with the Mike Trout card. This one wasn't redrawn, but it was also trimmed. But there's no alternative because it is a 1/1 superfractor. So is this something that you guys would be interested in owning at all? Would you pay as much as would you pay double or triple the red refractor autograph price, what you would normally pay for like a clean superfractor and a decent grade? Or would you not want any part of this? Like, how would you even pay like for this versus that Ronald Acuna sale that we just saw, assuming that you prefer Juan Soto?
I can go first. Yeah, I'll go first. I would pay for it. I like this card. I know it has a history, but we all have our own history at some point. And this card's special enough where I think it'll be okay. The one thing I'll say that is good for this card is the history of this is so public that I think it's going to be more accepted. And there's not really an alternative. There's not like a black shimmer 1/1. If there would have been, this would have been like an easy no. But this is still a Juan Soto superfractor. It was trimmed, yes, but at least it's authentic altered. It's the one. So for me, I might not pay the normal premium like multiplier between red versus superfractor, but I still would pay like more than a red for this card myself. That's just my thoughts, though.
What about Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I think this card is definitely one that I would absolutely love to own. I would definitely pay superfractor going rates for it. I mean, the fact that PSA corrected the slab to me is what gives it like actual real like gravitas and real value to it. So kudos to them for like acknowledging their mistake and I assume buying the card and correcting it. But it reminds me a little bit of like the Honus Wagner that Wayne Gretzky owned.
Yes.
You know, so like cards that have been, we find out that they have a story about them, they have a history. It just makes people want them more. You know, it just keeps them in the hobby, like in the spotlight a little bit.
Okay, but that's assuming that Juan Soto ends up being an iconic player. What if he doesn't become a Hall of Famer, right? And then you just have a trimmed card with an autograph that was wiped, and it's not like one of the hobby's most memorable cards, although it was at one point.
Well, that's true, but I mean, if you would spend the same or slightly less for a red, you'd be in the same boat, having just a paperweight if Soto flames out. I agree with what the guys have said. To me, it does differ from the Trout because the Trout was an orange, so there's 24 other of them, and this being the only one, I feel like the lack of alternatives is really what sets it apart. So yes, it's not how it came out of the pack. It's not the pack pulled condition, but that wouldn't deter me from wanting to purchase it if I was able to.
Jeff, are you going to spend more than what that Acuna sold for in a private sale to get this Soto? Or is there any sort of discount? You're truly paying as much as you would for a normal superfractor?
I would try.
If this was up for grabs along with those other two, I would still take the Acuña based on all the factors that we talked about before. Although, as I've talked about, I do think because of the way Soto plays and the way he hits, that his floor is probably lower. But I just, if I had that kind of money, I would want to look for some upside.
Scott?
I would try to get a discount. Yes. And I would I pay 100% of what this card would be expected to go for based off of multipliers? Probably not. But like, I would pay pretty close if it was me. And I guarantee you somebody would pay pretty close. And I don't know if this is like a bold opinion, and maybe Acuña shut this one up, but pure offensive numbers, Soto's ceiling is probably the highest in baseball, not named Aaron Judge or Mike Trout at this point, in my opinion. I think we have not seen the best Juan Soto season yet. I know it's been 6 or 7 years, but I think there's just going to be 1 year where he goes nuts, and I don't think it's happened yet.
I just had a question for you. Like, all right, so the Soto the way it is right now in that slab, or what if it had been dropped? What it hadn't been wiped, but it had been dropped and a corner was wrecked. So it's it's graded like a PSA 5. Which would you pay more or less for the 5 than you would for the authentic?
Yeah. That's a great question because everybody says it's still a 101. Condition doesn't matter. That's what they say all the time. But maybe authentic altered's different. But That's a great
Or
question.
Eye appeal might come into play there if it's got a big old
Yeah.
thing in the corner.
That I think a good comparison would be if you took the card and just like rubbed it up against like the pavement and really scuffed it up so you couldn't even see Soto. So like really like obviously it doesn't look like him now because he was like super skinny back then. But I think in that case, if it was just a dinged corner, I would take the dinged corner. And I pay a substantial amount more over this card here. That's altered. But if it was like if the card was like a PSA 1 and had like hole punches through it, then I'd probably prefer the trimmed version. And it would be the only version because there'd only be one. But yeah, I mean, I'd want a discount. I'd still pay over the red refractor auto price. But I'd want a little bit of a, I don't know, it might not be like the full 3 to 4x over. It might be like more like 2x. Mm-hmm. So maybe then I wouldn't get it.
So you'd pay about 50% of what you think the value would be for this card.
50 to 70%, yeah.
Okay. And I think that's probably where I would be too, right? Like I wouldn't want to go more than 80% value because then you're kind of getting crazy, like nothing ever happened to it. And we did talk about literally in a different episode recently how if you have to tell a story for a card, it's not a great thing to have necessarily. And that will have to be disclosed. And the story tells itself because it's all over, but it still has a story attached. So I don't know, like we already talked about, is that good? Is that bad? The Honus Wagner, people still would pay big money for that card today, even with the history. We know they would, and it'd be record breaking. So very tough question. But at the end of the day, I don't think any of us have to worry about it because we'll never be able to afford that card.
No, but it will be interesting to see what they decide to do with it. So there's been no confirmation of if it's going to just be out for open auction, what's going to happen with it.
It would be cool if it gets auctioned because we'd have like comps for 3 of like the most exciting, the biggest names in baseball's like first Bowman Chrome superfractors selling fairly close together. So
do you think there's a chance if this went to auction, it would pass the other two simply because no one's ever had a chance at it? And there's going to be a couple different high rollers going after it? Or do you think what we've said, where it's probably worth 70% of what it would have been, holds true?
I think they're too smart to auction it. Like everything else is getting kind of hammered in auctions right now, irrespective of the marketplace. They're just high-end cards aren't doing well right now. So I think they'll do something really creative, and they've shown the ability to actually be creative, especially over the last few months. In my opinion, Fanatics has, and it's probably not a coincidence that it's happened now versus like a year under tops. So there could be something bold coming. Who knows? But I don't know if it did sell in auction. That's a good point, Scott. There's a lot of hardcore Juan Soto collectors out there, and who knows? They could go crazy for a card like this. And Soto having fewer rookies and prospect cards that have meaning versus Acuña, that would certainly help too.
Yeah, especially if he gets traded to the Yankees, this thing could come up for auction like the next day.
That's what PSA is waiting for, Chris. There's waiting for that news to drop.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
We're going to see this become a redemption bounty in some Fanatics products somehow.
It could be. And, they probably already had to write it off as a loss. They already had to pay out whatever they were going to pay out. So now it's just sitting there. They can, have it as a giveaway.
2024 Bowman Chrome is going to have a Juan Soto chase, and the actual bounty is going to be $1 million or something stupid. That's probably going to happen, but wouldn't surprise me with the way things are going. Also, I do want to point out one thing before we end this episode. I polled my Instagram audience. I did not persuade them prior to the poll if they thought it would hurt Bryce Harper's card values if he moved to first base. 78% said no. So we are in the minority saying this. If you listen to this and we pissed you off, no, you are in the majority. But that's just our thoughts on that. So
I'm in the majority. I voted in that poll. I voted no.
I said
I don't know. I don't know how translatable stuff like that is. I mean, the same 78% probably thinks it's important for Mike Trout to win a World Series for its values to, go up 300% or something. The one note I'll make though is that his whole thing is like buying distressed assets. And is there no more example of like a distressed asset than this Juan Soto card? Like he probably finagled his way into a deal of buying this card. Well under what we're talking about with comparing it to Acuña and Harper.
Great point. Well, cool. Anything else anyone wants to add before we call this episode a wrap?
Yeah, just piggybacking on what you guys are saying, I think just posing the question like that doesn't get a true answer of. I think the biggest driver for his value, his card's value, is going to be his offensive performance. So I don't necessarily think the move to first base is going to impact that as much as if he's on the field for 150 games hitting the ball.
Yeah. And I hope he is, because at the end of the day, it's so good for baseball if Bryce Harper's good. It's so good for baseball if Juan Soto goes to the Yankees and is good. It's so good if Acuña goes for 50, 80 next year, something stupid. And so at the end of the day, like, I'm speculating that I'm kind of concerned about it, but doesn't mean that I'm hoping it to become a thing, right? Does that make sense? And so I hope Bryce Harper goes out there. He wins his second MVP as a first baseman. Maybe he finishes runner-up to Mookie, and we can call it a day. How does that sound? On that note, I went the whole episode without saying his name, but we'll end it on that. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.